E-bikes have grip, so let's look how to use that for the best possible potential when it comes to cornering. But of course, what's unique to e-bikes is how fast they can climb uphill, and that brings its own challenges when it comes to cornering uphill. First, let's start with the basics of cornering, and I think actually the physics of cornering. And it's all about trying to get your weight low and to the outside of the bike. Now, the way I do that is to drop my outside foot, but actually try and weight it as well. So don't just dangle it down there, really try and pressure that pedal. That will make a big difference to how stable your bike feels and how much grip you get. So I'm dropping my weight low, and the next thing I think about is trying to keep my weight above the bike. See, if I don't do that, if I just angle the bike over and stay in line with the bike, so if I look down now, I'm above the top tube. Try this at home, sit on your bike and do it. Actually now, my centre of gravity is over here, so it's dangling off the inside of the bike. Now that can work in things like berms, or if you've got loads of grip, but it's not a very stable position, because if I now slip, I'm going to fall to the inside. So what I'd much rather do is pick my outside elbow up, but also bring my hips to the outside of the saddle. This is much easier with your seat low. So if you've got a dropper seat post, take advantage of that when cornering. So now my weight is above the bike. If I look down now, I can see the whole side of the bike. It's much more stable and my weight is much nearer the tyres. Something to note about dropping your outside foot is that I don't do it until I get to the corner. For example, if I'm riding a rough straight beforehand, I want my feet level just so I can absorb those bumps, and then I'll drop my outside foot where I need the grip. Same counts for things like berms, where you compress really hard into a corner. It's much more stable to have your feet level and actually balance your weight on both feet rather than just through one. Another thing with the outside elbow, so dipping the bike over, it's really helpful. If the bike slides, you're much safer to then pick the bike up. If you're cornering more in line with the bike and it slides, you're much more likely to fall off. So that's the physics of cornering, but another big one for me is try and look around the corner. It's simply a case of you tend to go where you look. So if you're looking towards the exit, hopefully you'll get there without going offline. You can't always do that because things like trees in the way, but really concentrate on looking around. For me, I have to remind myself all the time, if I don't ride for a week, this will disappear and I'll have to do it because I'll just be messing up corners. Especially important for trying to link corners together. So I've got a left and a right. Really, the exit of one corner then becomes the entrance to my next, so looking is a big one. So we've talked about weight low and side to side over the bike. The final thing really is front to back. So what you're really aiming to do is trying to balance the weight on both tyres. That means that your bike will hopefully drift. When you go a little bit too fast and you start sliding, you won't get one tyre sliding more than the other. For example, if you just wash out the front tyre, that often leads to crashes. So you're really trying to balance that weight. So it does come down to body position. I actually try and bring my chest down slightly to the bars to weight that front tyre. But other things do make a difference to this. So your suspension setup, your stem length, it all works together really with your body weight, and you're aiming for sort of 50-50 weight front to rear. Ideally, when it comes to cornering, you want to try and come off the brakes. So you're trying to get the grip when you're turning, not two ways, trying to turn and slow the bike down. However, here I've got quite a steep, quite a loose set of corners, so I do have to brake to control myself. What I'm really trying to do now is come off the front brake as much as I possibly can to get that front tyre grip in. Then I'm just using the rear one to control myself. Occasionally I can pull it on a little bit more to just break that rear tyre loose and get it actually spinning round to help me turn. Now let's move on to something that's actually a really fun thing to try and master on an e-bike, and actually one of the biggest differences is uphill cornering. So now, rather than thinking about brakes, I'm thinking about the power through my rear tyre. All the same sort of techniques apply though, so I'm really trying to measure my weight front to rear, because now I need to stop that front wheel from pouring up into the air and wheeling, but I also need to keep that rear tyre gripping and driving me up the hill. Also, when you think about side to side, I'm really trying to weight the outside of my saddle. This turn, it's much easier to try and stay seated on the bike for trying to measure my weight front to rear, but I'm also trying to hover to the outside of the seat to try and keep my weight above the tyres. In technical and loose climbs like that, in the corners, I'm really trying to maintain consistent power, so really smooth pedaling to maintain grip on my rear tyre. Sometimes it's worth actually backing it off a power level so you don't get those big spikes in power. But also if you have to dab or you whack your pedal on the floor, you're going to find it really hard to get going again if that motor stops driving you forward. So it's all about consistent power. Another good technique for steep, loose corners is to actually use the back brake. So I'm dragging it and almost using it like a clutch just to smooth out the power. If you try and back off the power too much, your motor might stop pushing you, and then it's really jerky starting and stopping. You're likely to lose grip. So just keep the consistent power through the pedals and use your back brake to control the speed. Gear selection is important when climbing up steep corners. If you're in too low a gear, you'll be spinning your feet really fast. You're much more likely to then hit them on the floor on an obstacle. It's very hard to time your feet if you're doing that. You then might stall out and find it hard to get going again. If you're on too big a gear, you might run out of power, and then if you try and shift whilst you're climbing and putting lots of power through the pedals, you might find you snap your chain. Right, so that's how to corner your e-bike. If you've got any questions, leave them down below the video and I'll try and help you out. If you want to see some more videos, click up there for Motors Explained, down there for some common mistakes. Give us a thumbs up.